Welcome everyone to a new video series where I will talk about Arduino, Raspberry Pis and embedded development in general. I will go into more advanced topics which aren't covered on other YouTube channels, but I decided to dedicate a couple of videos to very basics, just to get you started. You can find all informations online, those are out there, so there is no point to explain something which is explained on hundreds of channels. I want to bring something new, something unique, and this is my development experience with working with Arduinos, Raspberry Pis, and maybe with all those things combined in a single project or so. But so stay tuned. Anyway, I will tell you everything to get you started if you are really into it or would like to try it out. And if you have a question or something, or you would like me to make a video on some specific topic, just let me know in the comments below. I will consider that and maybe I will make a video just for you. Anyway, today I will tell you how I started with Arduinos and maybe you will learn something out of my experience and maybe you will have some idea what needs to be bought if you want to get started. So, I started with Arduino or embedded development maybe 3 years ago when I initiated a cooperation with my cousin with the company called JSC Electronics, and this is the YouTube channel you are watching right now. We're doing some open source stuff, mostly focused on embedded electronics, but there are other projects like if we did something with Android, some open libraries, they are also out there. But this is not the topic of today's video. Basically, before I started with embedded development, I was working on mobile phone development or the Android development, and to some degree it is also an embedded system. And I'm dedicating whole Fridays just to that. So if you're interested in mobile development and how the phone is working, just tune me on Fridays. I got my first Arduino kit maybe 3 years ago, as I mentioned, and I had no idea how this works. I just had maybe 2 or 3 weeks to learn that stuff because my first project was already starting in a couple of weeks. And I'm a programmer, so I taught all the gists really quickly, and I was able to start doing some quality code in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks. But don't be worried, everyone can learn working with Arduinos because the technology, the framework is made in such a way that even non-programmers can start right away. I mean, even if you are in a high school and you don't have the knowledge necessary, you will learn everything as you go. So everyone is taking this into account when creating the libraries, when creating the documentation or whatever in this ecosystem. For me, I was surprised a little bit that you can make commercial projects with Arduino and actually make some money out of it. In Slovakia, this is not a common thing, and everyone was surprised when I told them that my living is making Arduino projects. But in the Czech Republic there is a different history. Those people are more entrepreneurial focused, so there are many small projects for small people, small customers who just need to do some specific stuff. So this is the ideal land if you want to learn or work or make a living on some interesting stuff where elsewhere is just not possible. When I started those 3 years ago, my cousin sent me the very basic equipment just to get me started. So I will show you what I have in my box, and you don't need to have everything in there, but maybe you will get some inspiration. So let me show you my equipment I own right at this moment. So let's start with the very basic boards. This one here is Arduino Uno, and this is a de facto standard in this Arduino environment. Those here are the GPIO pins, and basically what this means, I will go into more depth, but you can control some devices out of it. You can, for example, read some values, read some voltage levels, or you can control something because you write to those pins. I will show you an example later on in different videos, but for now you should just know that those are GPIO pins. This board can be powered on via a power adapter or via USB. This is probably the type B connector, but most of the time you just get the necessary cables with the packaging, so you don't need to worry much. There are clones of those Arduinos, so you can buy Chinese knockoffs, but if you get started and you don't know the details how those machines works, I just recommend to use the genuine parts. So this is Arduino Uno, and this one here is Arduino Mega, which is really similar board. I don't know if it has the same chip, probably it has a different one. The main difference is that it has more amount of memory. So instead of like 2 kilobytes of memory of Arduino Uno, maybe I'm not correct, I would need to check the spec sheet or data sheet, but I think Arduino Mega has 8 kilobytes of memory, which if you are into computer programming, you know that this is not much. This forces you to really think in front how to work with this memory, how to use that, and every single byte is precious here. And the other advantage of Arduino Mega compared to Uno is that it has more GPIO ports, so you can connect more stuff to it, and that's the main difference. It's again powered via USB or via the power cable or power adapter, and that is probably what you need to know for the start. I will explain other stuff as we go along. What you will also need, or what is really handy to have, is to have a multimeter. So I have one right here, and I have a Fluke multimeter, which is, let's say it's more expensive, but I got it at a bargain price. But you can buy something much less expensive to that. So with that you can do all basic measurements. This is useful if you want to debug your stuff, because for example you write the code to turn on a LED, let's say every second or so, and you can check that the Arduino is really sending the proper command on the GPIO pins. So that is why I have this multimeter. I don't need to have a LED to confirm that. I can just measure the output voltage on the pin. And again, I will explain how to do this in some other videos in the upcoming weeks. So stay tuned. This is the Fluke multimeter. Again, you can buy something much cheaper, but I would personally avoid the cheapest ones. I mean the multimeters for like 10 bucks or so. This one here is the M5 stack, and I will show you how this works and how can you use it for Arduino development later. This is more advanced platform and it supports many extensions like I think displays or something. Let me just show you the basic module. So let's open the box. And it's called M5 stack just because you can stack the modules on top of each other. So every module is like you can see here, those are two parts. This is the base and this is the main module which is necessary to have everything working, but there are others like GSM module or GPS module or whatever. So really nice platform, and it is also programmable via Arduino. And I will show you a video one day where I will have a real-world example. I just need to scrap the sensitive information and make an example where I'll show you the useful stuff without showing the proprietary code. So this is really interesting. And now, this is my Arduino box. Those 3 years ago it was in a different box, but the content is almost the same. Just over time I added more stuff to it. So let's take a look. Right here I have a LCD display, I hope. You can see a CD. Yeah, this display can be connected, I believe, to Raspberry Pis. Maybe even to Arduinos, but I don't know for sure at this moment, so I'll just put it aside. I have also various Ethernet cables, which are always handy if you work with electronics like these. So different patch cables, different colors. Of course, USB cables, because those are always handy. And this one is USB mini, I think. Some adapters, HDMI splitters, which are sometimes handy if you work with Raspberry Pis. More USB cables. This one here is special. This is like 10-meter long USB cable, which is useful if you work in a real-world environment and you need to control some machines over USB without being present next to the machine. But for hobby scenarios you will probably don't use that, so I'll just show you what I have. Please ignore the mess. Normally if you have more space in your home, you can of course put this into separate boxes, into separate places. I don't work with that every single day, so I have everything in here. I just pick up whatever I need at this moment and close everything up. So that is how I work. More USB, more adapters. That is really the baseline, having enough adapters to power all the equipment. And this is the blue cable. This is what you got with your Arduinos. But probably this is not the right one because of the connector. You'll probably need something like this. So let me check that. See, a different connector. Usually this one is used for printers, but this same connector is used also for Arduinos. Just to let you know. This one here is mini HDMI, and this one is used for Raspberry Pi, because Raspberry Pi 4 and newer models have a mini USB. They have 2 mini USB ports instead of one full-fledged not mini USB, but HDMI, of course. So those Raspberry Pi 4s have 2 mini HDMI ports instead of one full-fledged HDMI port. And this is the cable to connect with your computer or capture card or your monitor. So it's always handy to have something like this. This one here is a null modem cable or a serial cable. When you work with embedded stuff, this is still a common thing. For example, I have my projector for my home cinema using this connector to control this via home automation. And if you are interested, I can make a separate video for that. It was a cool stuff. And of course, this is an adapter into USB because most of the modern computers don't have this interface built in anymore. USB-C cables, those are useful if you work with mobile stuff, because I mentioned this is still embedded platform. And this is the genuine Raspberry Pi adapter, because the non-genuine ones sometimes don't work that well. So it's really good to have at least something proper, at least to debug or verify if something doesn't work properly. Now, what's here? More USB cables. This is the adapter from full-fledged HDMI to mini HDMI. Another HDMI cable, which is always useful or handy. And now we get into this interesting stuff. So, power adapter, with controllable output voltage between, I don't know, 7 to 12 volts. You can change the plug here, but I don't have the whole set with me anymore probably. This is an older adapter I have. There are others. This one was bought probably specifically for Arduinos, and you can find them in many e-shops for selling Arduino stuff. Another power adapter with changeable voltage. So again, this one is set to 12 volts right now, and the minimum is 1.5 volts. Those cables are really useful. If you take a look at the ending here, or let me show you like this. This one is the GPIO board, and there are two kinds of cables, or three kinds of cables. First ones are look like this, and you can plug them right into here, or there are others. So basically you can combine, you can for example join two cables together to have a longer line or something, but basically you just pick whatever you need. So for the Arduino stuff, and if you have a breadboard is a board like this, this breadboard will make easier to you to connect all components and prototype stuff, because you can hook resistors, coil, capacitors, everything in here, because those holes are here, and you can interconnect this breadboard with the Arduino stuff using cables like these. So in this case you would use a cable with both pins in here on both sides, and one end goes here, one end goes here, and I will show you some examples in a different video. So let's put this aside. More cables. So what's this? I don't know quite for sure. Let's see. Yeah, so this is ESP32 development board. It again can run Arduino stuff, but this supports also MicroPython and other frameworks. So this is really useful board. And also what's interesting though, it's much more powerful than the original Arduinos, but it's much cheaper as well. So interesting stuff. I don't know what this is about, so let's just put this aside. Those are, I don't know, GPIO pins which you can solder to some other boards. Arduinos have this already soldered on, but it's always to have this, but not if you just get started, so just ignore this for the moment. And this is something I got with my very first package. So a box containing one, I think, Arduino Uno manual with some examples what to use, and some basic components like resistors. So this is a pack of resistors, 30 different kinds of resistors, and as you can see I have other stuff here, so some buttons, LEDs. For example, this one here, the white one, is RGB LED, so this can have any color I want, and I can program that using Arduinos. I can show you that later. Again, some buttons. For example, I have a library I wrote to detect button presses and to trigger certain actions which you can map based on the button press. For example, when I press the button for a long time, like this, something different will happen than, for example, when I double click. So all basic components are here. Buttons are also available on the main board. So if you are using that just for the simple stuff, you can use, for example, this button probably. This is a reset button, so maybe not. Anyway, some boards do have buttons and you can use them. and for the others you can always hook external buttons. So this is a segment display which can be controlled by Arduinos. I can show different kinds of digits here, or some power meter or whatever. So really basic stuff. This is a potentiometer which you can control the voltage levels. Oh, this is interesting. This is probably either a speaker or maybe even a circuit board able to play MP3s. I'm not sure at this point. Anyway, those two are stereo speakers, and you can hook this up to Arduinos as well and control via those 4 pins. So once you get used to working with those pins and output voltage and everything, you will quickly learn the stuff and you can play around with new stuff. So what I recommend, to start with some examples as always, and then when you know the gists, you can figure out stuff out and make your own projects. This is a servo motor, I think, controlled via this driver board. And what's this? Yeah, some more resistors. So let's put this aside. Again, this one here is yet another breadboard, and this is a bigger one to the previous one. Let's compare it. So you can see it's much bigger but also more sturdy. This one here is iron, I think, iron base, so better quality, but I think most of you will just suffice with this. This is more than enough for the beginnings, so feel free to use that. What's here? Some remote control. And this is what I have no idea what this chip does, or circuit board. Those here are some batteries. More cables, as you can see, and HDMI. More resistors. Those are always handy. But remember, you don't need to have all this to get started. I will show you what is a good starting point in an eShop, just very quickly, and you don't need to have everything of this. This is perfect if you want to try many different things. So this FTDI chip is really interesting stuff. It allows you to connect from your computer to Raspberry Pi platform, and you will connect directly to these GPIO ports. As you can see, those are 4 pins, and this doesn't work just with Raspberry Pi, but you can hook this to different embedded platforms supporting UART, and this allows you this makes debugging easier because you can see the stuff on a serial line. So for example, I have this Tourist Omnia router, and I can hook this cable to my Tourist Omnia to see debugging information when I develop the software. For example, my operating system is not able to run for some reason because I'm a developer and I'm having a custom build. So with this cable I can figure out what is going on there. Really necessary if you work with embedded hardware on a serious level, not just as a hobbyist. This one here is yet another display. It's controlled via those pins, and you'll probably need to solder them on the board if you want to use this. Anyway, let's check what's inside of this box. not sure, but I think this is an equipment for LoRaWAN, which is a standard, open standard to transmission small portions of data across large distances. So, as you can see, there is an antenna and some modules to work with this network. To this point, I never worked with this, but I would like to try something like this because it could be useful when things go south, right? Micro SD reader for Arduinos, another thing which can be useful. Some basic components. By the way, you can buy boxes like this, they are everywhere, easy to find, so I recommend to have order in this stuff, more than I do. This one here is the Ethernet adapter for Raspberry Pi, because sometimes you would like to have more than one Ethernet adapter, and maybe you will ask why. Well, I used to have my Raspberry Pi as a main router for quite some time, and I wrote a blog post about this topic, so definitely there is a way how to use that, and not just with Raspberry Pis, but with other embedded electronics. Adapters like these are really cheap, maybe 10 euros each, so it's useful to have at least one at your disposal, and that is what I have. I have a couple of them actually, but most of them are used. Okay, yet another board. This one here is a package of RJ12 plugs, and those are used for the telephone lines, but you can actually transmit arbitrary signals across those lines, so it's not just for telephone, and I have this handy just in case I would need to use them somewhere. So that is that. Another display for Arduinos. And what's here? This one here is yet another box with basic components or modules you can use for your project. So I will try to open this up. As you can see, there is a catalog with a simple description. So for example, this component will measure temperature, or this one here is a relay, joystick, wall switch. So it is described in here, and you can find the components in this box. Really useful for prototyping stuff. We are almost at the end of my tour, so this is empty. All right. Battery module, so that you can use batteries instead of power charger adapter for your Arduinos, so that it can run independently for hours without need to be hooked up to your power socket. This is the joystick. I showed the picture a couple of seconds ago. Some more components. This one here is the extension shield for Arduino Mega, so you can just hook this up like this, and it will further extend the possibilities of this neat hardware. So just to let you know, there are many shields for Arduinos. You can buy everything pre-made. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, as people used to say. Right. And this special cable, this is for my next dock, which is a way how to connect my Raspberry Pi to some external monitor. But this is not a typical cable. Okay. So that is about it from my tour, and let me show you what I would recommend you to buy if you want to get started. So here we are in one Arduino eShop I tend to use, but you can actually use whatever eShop you want, just in case it sells Arduino stuff, it's okay. So what I would personally buy if I just started, there is something like Developing platforms, Arduinos, and maybe we'll find something like here. So here is some Arduino Nano and some clones of it. Let me find if there is something like starter kit. And there is IoT starter kit, so let's click on that. So for example, here one Arduino basic stuff. Let's take a look what's inside. So you have Arduino Uno, the breadboard, some cables, buttons, LEDs, resistors. Probably they're also making a guidelines or video tutorials from what I know, so it's worth a try. Anyway, something like this. I personally would go for IoT or Arduino kits because they have the basics to get you started, and once you get into this into more depth, you can actually you already know what to buy next, so you can always build upon this kit and try something else and buy some other stuff. By the way, this is a typical code in Arduinos, so in the setup function, and I will go into much more detail in a separate video. You set the pin modes, so you either read some voltage via input pins, or you output something to a different circuit board via output pins. And yeah, I will go through this stuff, so don't be worried. That is probably the it. I would like to find out what's inside. I'm not sure if... yeah. So we have some LEDs, buttons, resistors, and most likely you can buy other stuff on this page. So this is a kit built by specifically by this eShop. Maybe there are other kits made by someone else. For example, this Ultimate Uno R3 starter kit. It is possible that I have something like this. So it costs like 103 euros, or let's say 100 euros to get you started. And this is a more advanced kit. I can already see, again, it has Arduino Uno. This one here is probably a breadboard, but I never seen something like that. This one here is a breadboard. So red, yellow, green LEDs. Some buttons again, some components, infrared receiver, for example, so you can program or control your Arduinos via remote control with this one. Not really a pretty one, but it works. And I think this infrared receiver is universal, so if you have a spare remote which is unused, you can also program this with your Arduinos if you want to. So other components, tripod, I don't know what this is, I know Slovak terminology, segment displays, dot matrix, digital tube, segment digital tube. So something like this, the Arduino starter kit. And regarding Raspberry Pis, let me see if there is something for the Raspberry Pis as well. So probably not. Okay, but you can always buy Raspberry Pi separately. So what I would personally buy is click on here, Raspberry Pi. By the way, there are other platforms, but if you're not familiar with Raspberry Pi, I would stick to this because it's easier to get started with. And later, as you understand what is going on, you can try, for example, Orange Pi. So the latest model is Raspberry Pi Model 4. The highest end model has 8 gigs of RAM, and I have one of those boards in my disposal. Thanks to the COVID situation, those are not available at this moment, so you will just need to search the internet. Maybe in some eShops they are available. For Raspberry Pi, I think this version is really cool because you have a keyboard, These GPIO pins are here, also USB. Everything is in a nice little box, and this is a perfect computer to get you started, because it's a full-fledged Raspberry Pi with everything in a nice cover, basically. But again, not available at this point. By the way, many components designed for Arduinos work also with Raspberry Pi, thanks to the GPIO bus, and I will show you how does this work, how you can connect various components later on, but baby steps. So I hope that this video was inspirational in some way. It wasn't my goal to teach you everything in one single video. I just wanted to hook you in to actually decide to start, because if you get into embedded stuff, it's really fun, and I believe fun is always good. So you will learn something along the road, and having some fun, why not? And with that, thank you very much for your attention. The next video about Arduinos and Raspberry Pis will be released next Monday. If you are interested also in mobile development, I will be doing a course or a video series where I will explain everything regarding mobile phones into details, so no prior experience or knowledge is necessary. I will try to explain everything in a simple or layman terms. The only prerequisite is that you are really interested to learn this stuff or something about this. So as I will go along, you will go into deeper and more advanced topics, and who knows, maybe one day you will be able to compile your own software. So thank you very much for your attention. If you like this video, you know what to do. If you disliked, you again know what to do, or leave me a comment below this video. Maybe you can always suggest a topic for me to shoot a video about. And with that, thank you very much, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.